Chapter 6, No matter what happens to you, failure is an inside job. When you learn to accept responsibility for yourself, your problems, and your failures, you are better prepared to fail forward. But what about when you're faced with overwhelming difficulties that you didn't create and you cannot control? At no time in life are people more prone to allow failure to make them give up than when external circumstances cause extreme hardship or grief. But ultimately, no matter whether the difficulty is self-created or comes from somewhere outside of you, failure is created within the person. It is always an inside job. Many people desire to control the circumstances of their lives, but the truth is that we cannot determine what will come our way. We can't control the hands we're dealt, only how we play the cards. South African General Jan Christian Smuts said, "A man is not defeated by his opponents, but by himself." That's true. No matter how daunting the circumstances of your life may be, the greatest battle you wage against failure occurs on the inside, not the outside. How do you fight that battle? You start by cultivating the right attitude. You're probably familiar with Murphy's Law, which says, if anything bad can happen, it will, and at the worst possible time. And then there's the Peter Principle, which says people always rise to the level of their incompetence. There's another saying similar to those called the Law of Human Behavior. It says, sooner or later, we get just what we expect. I have a question to ask you. Is the law of human behavior optimistic or pessimistic? Stop and think about your answer. I say that because your response reveals your attitude. If you expect the worst out of a life, then you probably said the law was written by a pessimist. If you have a positive outlook, then you probably answered optimist, because the prospect of getting what you expect is very encouraging to you. Your attitude determines your outlook. The first element in winning the internal battle against failure is to maintain a positive outlook. University of Pennsylvania psychology professor Martin Seligman, who has studied employees in 30 different industries, observes that people who bounce back are optimists. Let's face it, not everyone is naturally optimistic. Some people are born seeing the glass half empty rather than half full. But no matter what your natural bent is, you can become a more optimistic person. How do you cultivate optimism? By learning the secret of contentment. If you can learn that, then no matter what happens to you, you can weather the storm and build on the good that you find in any situation. There are a lot of misconceptions about contentment. Let's talk about what it's not. Number one, it's not containing your emotions. We all experience negative emotions, and while you don't want to let your emotions run amok, you shouldn't try to stuff them either. Denial doesn't help you become content. In fact, your emotions will come out eventually, even if you try to bury them. Number two, it's not maintaining your current situation. My dad, who was a pastor for many years, used to tell the story about a farmer in one of his churches who refused to improve himself. Dad would try to encourage and cajole him, but he said the old man just wouldn't change. His response to my father was always the same. I'm not making much progress, but I'm well established. One day my father was driving past that man's farm, and he saw that the old farmer's tractor was stuck in the mud. No matter what the man did, mud just flew and the tractor stayed put. After the old farmer gave it one more try and was no better off than he had been before, he started cussing up a storm. At that point, my dad rolled down his window and hollered out to the man, "Well, you're not making much progress, but you certainly are well established." Being content doesn't mean being satisfied with a bad situation. It simply means having a good attitude as you work your way out of it. Number three, it's not attaining position, power, or possessions. In our culture, too many people believe that contentment comes from attaining material possessions or positions of power. But they aren't the keys of contentment either. If you are tempted to believe that they are, remember the words of John D. Rockefeller. When a journalist asked him how much wealth was enough, the millionaire, who was at that time one of the richest and most powerful men in the world, answered, "Just a little more." True contentment comes from having a positive attitude. It means expecting the best in everything, not the worst, remaining upbeat even when you get beat up, seeing solutions in every problem, not problems in every solution, believing in yourself even when others don't, and holding on to hope even when others say it's hopeless. No matter what happens to you, a positive attitude comes from within. Your circumstances and your contentment are unrelated. Failure is an inside job, and so is success. If you want to achieve, you have to win the war in your own thinking first. You can't let failure outside of you get inside of you. You certainly can't control the length of your life, but you can control its width and depth. You can't control the contour of your face, but you can control its expression. You can't control the weather, but you can control the atmosphere of your mind. Why worry about things you can't control when you can keep yourself busy controlling the things that depend on you? Right now you may be saying, "That's all well and good for you, John. You haven't experienced what I have." If you still have a hard time believing that failure is really an inside job, then you need to hear the story of someone who maintained a winner's attitude while overcoming the most difficult of circumstances. His name is Roger Crawford. He makes his living as a consultant and public speaker. He's written 2 books. He travels all across the country working with Fortune 500 companies, national and state associations, and school districts. Those aren't bad credentials. But if that doesn't impress you, how about this? Before becoming a consultant, he was a professional tennis player certified by the United States Professional Tennis Association. Still not impressed? Would you change your opinion if I told you that Roger had no hands and only 1 foot? Roger Crawford was born with a condition called ectrodactylism. When he emerged from his mother's womb, the doctor saw that he had a thumb-like projection extending out of his right forearm and a thumb and a finger growing out of his left forearm. He had no palms. His legs and arms were shortened, and his left leg possessed a shrunken foot with only 3 toes. His foot was amputated when he was 5. Roger's parents were told by various medical professionals that he would never be able to walk, probably would not be able to take care of himself, and would never lead a normal life. But Roger's parents were determined to give him the best chance possible for living a normal life. They raised him to feel loved, to be strong, and to develop independence. "You're only as handicapped as you want to be," his father used to tell him. Roger appreciated the encouragement and training that he received from his parents, but I don't think he really understood the significance of it or his achievements until he was in college and he interacted with someone who wanted to meet him. He had received a phone call from a man who had read about his tennis victories, and Crawford agreed to meet him at a nearby restaurant. When Roger stood up to shake hands with the man, he discovered that the other guy had hands that were almost identical to his. That got Crawford excited, because he thought he had found someone similar to him, but older, who could act as his mentor. But after talking with the stranger for a few minutes, he realized that he was wrong. Roger says, "Instead, what I found was someone with a bitter, pessimistic attitude who blamed all of life's disappointments and failures on his anatomy. I soon recognized that our lives and attitudes couldn't have been more different. His attitude was, the world owes me, and his problem was that the world disagreed. He was even angry with me because I didn't share his despair." The two kept in touch for several